The guru? Yeah, I've heard about him. Nasty mushroom guy that lives in the forest. Most folks say he's dangerous, but the way I see it, he ain't the danger. Danger is in what he says. Tells you stories that claw at your mind. People leave the forest just to head right back in for more crazy tales. One guy I knew went in there once, came out the next day shouting about diaper dogs and Lindsay Lohan. I'd stay clear of him, unless you want to get sucked in by the Shroom Guru.
Welcome to the first episode of the Shroom Guru podcast. You may have heard about some type of podcast named Talking Topics, and I can assure you that that podcast does still exist. However, it's being relegated to lesser matters not befitting a mushroom such as myself. What do you think about that, Mike? You sad to see Talking Topics go from once a week to every other week?
Talking Topics is dead. Long live Shroom Guru.
Yes, of course. Long live me. And speaking of which, I guess I'll introduce myself. I am Gooter Spooch, and I'm a giant mushroom. I rule this forest with an iron fist, and anyone who finds their way in here with interesting things to say will be eaten up and turned into one of my mushroom peons. With me today is Mike, a prisoner of Canada, and I believe he used to be like some type of Mad Max king or some shit.
Yeah, although I just had a great escape from Canadian prison.
Yeah, I can tell because you're not in Canadian prison as we speak.
Yeah, I guess so.
You're right here with me, just off screen, over there.
Laughing with all my friends.
Yes, well, they're not here. I told them they had to wait outside. But just to be clear, everyone, full disclosure, Mike comes here to speak with me whenever I discuss my topics, and in exchange, I give him a small amount of slightly poisonous, though not toxic, mushroom slime for him to take back to his boys so they can get lit off their tits.
You're basically Mushroom Raytheon.
Yeah, pretty much, except instead of dealing missiles that kill children, I deal drugs that get Mad Max weirdos high.
I mean, yeah, they do get really high, and and Mad Max did rip off our aesthetic.
Yeah, they definitely did. The Greater Detroit Exclusionary Zone was definitely the historical precedent used to inspire the Mad Max movies, which were set in Australia, which is close to a Detroit Exclusionary Zone, but not quite. In any case... In any case, today we'll be discussing a bit of history. Mike, what do you know about Italians?
Oh boy. I know they don't like you.
Ooh, yeah, they definitely don't like me. As a mushroom, I'm incapable of using a keyboard, but that does not mean I cannot use the internet. Going on one of the websites called Reddit, I went to a subreddit called r/Italy to share a previous creation of mine discussing the years of lead in Italy, and was promptly banned after about 5 hours of it being live. So that's pretty cool. I am not welcome in Italy, so as vengeance, I will now discuss their hilarious history. Before we begin, I must once again reiterate that this show and myself recognizes Italian people's status as POCs, people of Carbonara, and that we will not be doing anything that would be in any way offensive to anyone who is not Italian. Only Italians will be offended in this show, I promise. Any thoughts? Well, I'm sorry. This episode in particular, we will be making fun of Catholics. So I apologize. Is there a problem, Mike? Are you Catholic?
No, we're just expanding the insult base out.
Well, it's not an insult. We're just going to offend them without actually trying. It's really difficult to talk about this story without talking about the foolishness of at least the historical church of the Catholics.
Sure. All right, let's get into it.
So, Mike, what do you know about Italian history?
Oh boy. I don't
Real
know.
big picture kind of shit.
I know that like Italy is fairly new historically. Otherwise, it was like they got like, oh, we're fucking Lombards. Oh, we're Sicilians. Oh, we're Napolese.
Yeah, and before that, they were all Romans, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, yes. The answer is yes. Fuck you, Mike. The answer is yes. The Lombardian League had not been established. They were Romans. So that's where we're going to start. So, you know the Romans. They're gone, right? They got fucking dunked on. At least the Western Roman Empire got dunked on. And because of this, there was a bit of an issue in Italy. It left a very large power vacuum, which the only real things you could do was to form your own city-state and sort of vie for your own interests. You know, sort of like local warlords, but more of like a community of small warlords. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, these warlords had to, figure out how to get more territory and defend themselves and such. So what they did was they grasped on to one of the biggest political issues of the day. Do you know what that is, Mike?
Oh boy, I'm gonna say that it might have been Christianity.
Not really. It's more about Italians specifically. There was a very, very, very long sort of like conflict over a course of like 300 years after the fall of the Roman Empire between the Guelphs and the Ghibellines. I don't know if I said that correctly. I'm not going to try. With the Guelphs being the people who supported the fucking Pope and the Papal States and the Holy See and shit. So they're down with the Catholic shit, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. They believe that, Roma is controlled by the Catholic Church and all its other shit, right? On the other side was the Ghibellines, who believed that the only people who could lay claim over them was the Holy Roman Emperor, and that they should reestablish the Holy Roman Empire. Making sense so far?
Okay.
And what ends up happening is that obviously the church is like, hey, like God said so you have to listen to us, right? And the Ghibellines are like, go fuck yourselves. We only listen to the emperor because he's the only person that matters, even though there's not one out right now. So these city-states would very regularly say, well, that guy over there has shit I want, and he is a Ghibelline. So all I have to do to get his shit is to declare that my city is a Guelph, right? We're a Guelph city, and side with the Pope, and the Pope will then give me free allowance to go kill the shit out of them for being heretics and steal their shit. Make sense?
Yeah, I mean, if anything else.
And thus we come to a tragic tale of two cities, Mike. On one side, we have Modena, who are Ghibellines. Much smaller city, generally not as big. And then on the other side, we have Bologna, who are Guelphs. And they had always been sort of like not happy with each other, as Italians are to do. They flung spaghetti and got really fucking pissed off at each other very regularly.
Bologna.
I'm sorry?
Or bologna.
Yeah, there you go, bologna. Yeah, bologna catapults and shit, and they drove their pizza wheeled carts or whatever to go murder them. But they had a lot of border skirmishes and shit. They were very, as Italians do, they battled to the death on a regular basis, right? Mm-hmm. But shit was not going very well because they would constantly have these border sieges. And at one point, Bologna, who was always just kind of being shitters, to Modena, would constantly attack their shit. They have border skirmishes, do you know what the term rabble means in like a historical context?
Historical context? Oh, jeez. I don't know if I assume it just meant, like, fucking group of peasants.
It means a mob of armed peasants.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like an army that isn't actually an army that's, like, full of shit-slinging morons.
Yeah.
Well, there was a problem with Bologna having way more people, but a severely less organized military force, right? Like, massively less so. So they would consistently form rabbles that would go and sort of, like, annoy and fuck around and piss off on the border and steal shit from the Modenans. And eventually they seized Bazzano and Savino from Modena. And Modena was not happy. Those are, like, I believe, really small towns, right? They were like, hey, what the fuck? But because the Modenese were not under the Pope, Pope Boniface VIII...
Not even gonna try it.
Fuck that, no. Pope Boniface VIII confirmed that even though Bologna had stole their shit, that it was totally legal and that they could have their shit. So we have some fuckery going on in about 12. That's in 1296. Okay, so we have some history of them stealing shit, and then shit got real bad. Mike, if you're in a city that has flagging political support for your side, and you're the sort of like dictatorial controller, and you have to answer to like some powerful people who are not exactly happy with how you're doing. They're not mad yet, but they're not happy. What do you think is probably the best way to get them on your side? Remember,
declare war,
no, sorry. Okay, that is the correct answer, but remember, you are Italian. Get in that mindset. But yes, declare war.
Fucking blood vengeance.
Yes. So, what ended up happening was Marquis, Aldo the Eighth de Este Marquis of Ferrera, whatever, some fucking dude. He was Italian. He controlled Modena, right? And he was like, oh yeah, my political party support's not really going great, so I'm just gonna consistently raid them back. Just to attack the fucking Bolognians, to make sure that his party didn't, like, the rich Modenian nobles didn't fuck him up. And to give a better expression of, like, sort of how these sides were drawn, typically the Ghibellines, the reason that they supported the Roman Empire sort of, like, structure of things was because back in the Roman Empire, a lot of their legitimacy of the emperor came from the fact that the Senate was completely full of wealthy landowners, right? That lived in Rome but owned land outside of it, right? Are you aware of that, Mike?
Yeah.
Well, basically, if you were a wealthy land-owning Italian at this point, you were almost always going to be a Ghibelline, because then if you sided with the Holy Roman Emperor, you would basically never have to forfeit your lands. Whereas the Guelphs were typically a lot of, like, very rich, sort of like city people, if that makes any sense, right? Whose interests align more with, since their value is not generated directly from land and agriculture, it's better if they side with the Pope, because the Pope isn't going to, like, steal their money directly from them, but the Pope totally will take your land from you and use it to give to other people, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So typically these Ghibellines will be land-owning, like, aristocrats who own, like, a lot of agricultural land. So that's why Mr. Azzo had to make sure that the nobles were not pissed off, because they owned his ass, basically. They owned all the shit around it. And they could get their individual, like, tenant farmers to come murder him, if that makes any sense. But the issue is, when his successor got elected, the Mantuan Passerino Bonacolsi, right? He was actually an agent of Louis IV of Bavaria, Mike. Do you know who Louis IV of Bavaria is, Mike?
I mean, he's the 4th Louis of Bavaria.
But what do you think that he might have his final title be?
Louis IV, Bavaria.
Think, where is Bavaria, Mike, in a historical context, geographically?
I mean, within the Holy Roman Empire.
Would you be surprised if I told you that Louis IV
was
the Holy Roman Emperor?
Okay, sure, all right. Yeah.
So now, the person who controls Modena is actually an agent of the Holy Roman Emperor. So he's like, all right, boys, well, earlier we did this because, you know, we wanted some political support, but now we're in it for the money. We're in it for the political activism. So he was like, all right, let's fucking go.
Right? This praxis.
Yes, praxis is when you do war on random people. But he's like, yes, let's get this shit rocking. And what he did was he went really hard in the paint, Mike. Okay. He was like, all right, we got Parma, which is another town. We got Reggio, another town. So now it is time to absolutely clap the fuck out of their cheeks, right? So Pope John, otherwise known as Papa John, who I will refer to him from now on as, Pope John the 22nd, otherwise known as Papa John, declared war on, didn't declare war, but he declared Bonacolossi a rebel against the church and said, you know what? If you guys kill him, and he's an enemy of the church, that's literally like a crusade. Like, literally. So, like, if you want to just, like, make him dead, just, if that's a thing that ends up happening while you're on your holy quest to kill heathens, that's none of my business, but God will forgive you all of your sins. Go ahead. Right?
Yeah.
And, fun fact, Mike, do you know the other thing he declared as being a valid target? Anything that Bonacolossi owned.
Oh God.
Which included every single town under his control. So, Mike, shit got real. All of the Gulfs were like, oh shit, that means we can do the murder and we won't get in trouble for it. God's on our side, boys. Let's ride up. And they're like, yeah. So they start forming rabbles, Mike. And I mean, like, big rabbles. Shit gets real fucking crazy, right? And when I say real fucking crazy, Mike, I mean, like, okay, if originally these were sort of like, Like you know like skirmishes that happen between like anti-fascist movements and like fucking morons like the Proud Boys and shit at like protests.
Sure.
You know, like fascist counter protest being counter protested by anti-fascists, and then like the third party who are like Black Lives Matter, so they're just stuck in the middle, right?
Yeah.
That's like some baby shit. Now imagine they're all Italian and there's like 10 times more of them, but they don't have guns. Shit's gonna get real.
They just have like sticks.
Yes. So what ends up happening, right, is the Bolognese were like, all right, let's get this money. So they went between like the rivers nearby, and I think I might be able to find a map of this just to show off. But they went between the rivers that like sort of separated the main areas, where a lot of this where a lot of the Modenese were making like their farm life and shit, because between the two rivers would be the
Po River Valley, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they had and this is like northern Italy. They had like a very, very fertile land there. So the Modenese were like, or the Bolognese were like, nah, and they burned it all down. Okay, so they blow all that shit up, they burn it all down, right? And that's in July, right? And they're like, you know what? Last month we fucked them up, boys, yeah. So they start drinking, right? They start having a good time. The next month they're like, damn, bro, it's it's been a really long time since we showed them how the Bolognese are the fucking greatest. And then they're like, you know what? You're right. So, do you know what a podesta is, Mike?
Do I know what?
A podesta.
A Podesta.
Mm-hmm.
John Podesta.
No, not John Podesta. Do you know what a podesta is?
All right, no, I don't.
Okay, a podesta. A podesta is sort of like the highest civil office you can possibly hold. Think of it as like the sort of like governor of a city, the chief magistrate, if you will.
Sure.
So that guy gets it in his mind. I don't remember who it is. They don't write it down. They were like, you know what, boys? All of this winning is like not enough. We have to do more of that. So he gets a gigantic Bolognese rabble together, right, on the border.
I'm gonna be so tired of winning.
And remember, a rabble being an army of peasants. It's like, this is a lot of people, right? He gets a rabble together. He's like, come on, folks. We're tired of winning so much. We gotta keep going. You have to show those fucking those fucking Modenese that we own their asses. And they're like, yeah! I love me some Bolognese. Never mind, I'm not gonna say that. That's fucked up. They get together, right? And for 2 weeks in August, so half of it, they just start going absolutely crazy and just raiding and destroying a fuck ton of the Modenese land, right? Mantua? Whatever. Mantua, right? In September. Mantua was taken, right? It got fucked up. And by the end of September, the Bolognese, like, castle of Montenegro, who gives a fuck? I don't know. I don't know what that is, right? Was betrayed to the Modenese, right? By people who were pissed off about all the Bolognese bullshit that was going on and all like the crazy civil unrest, right? And then the people who betrayed them, right? Like the two people who owned like the castle, basically, like the people who were in charge of it. They got executed by the Modenese for allowing their shit to get destroyed all the fucking time. So they gave up the castle and then got killed anyway. Right?
That feels bad.
But Mike, that's the problem. The Bolognese were like, they took our castle! They were not happy. Sorry, they took our castle! They were not happy because from their perspective, Mike, not knowing too much about the deal that went on, the Modenese just took their fucking castle. The lower number, inferior Modenese just nabbed a castle out from under them. How can they allow that to happen, Mike? They're the goddamn Bolognese. They're from Bologna. They cannot allow these Modenese fucks to steal their castles without recompense, Mike. So you know what they do?
They're gonna go take that fucking castle.
That's their fucking castle! So they start a war.
Yeah, as you do.
Earlier earlier, and this is the War of the Bucket. This is literally, it lasts not even a year. Remember, this is like, we're in, this is like, October by this point. Right? And it lasts not even a year. And they're like, you know what, we gotta make an actual army this time. But you know what they did instead of making an actual army, Mike? Their army, quote unquote, was just taking all the rabbles and smashing them together under one dude.
Okay.
Right? So now you have 32,000 Bolognese peasants and semi-armed people. You know, it's kind of like, it's bring your own gun. It's bring your own gun time, boys. You know what I mean? That kind of shit, right? You said it was more than you thought it was going to be?
Yeah, 32,000 fucking angry Italians. That's
No, Mike. 32,000 bloodthirsty Italians.
I mean, fair.
Italians are in a perpetual state of anger. This is bloodthirsty Italians. These are war Italians. War Italians, if you will. Right? They're tactical Italians, Mike. But but they get all their shit together at the throughout October. They get all their people together, and they're already ready to go in November, Mike. I don't know if you know anything about ancient military campaigns, but that's a pretty short time cycle to be getting together.
Yeah, it's a pretty short mobilization period.
Also, to be clear about how ridiculously fucking, like, large amounts of people this is. If you think of, like, a Roman legion. Do you know how many people were in a Roman legion, Mike?
A legion? Oh, it's like only like 1,000 or something, I think.
Yes. Well, okay. So, technically, because of the way that, Roman legions work, so each squad is like 10 dudes, right? But they're 10 dudes, right? That were, like, they counted the people who carried their shit around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it wasn't purely like every soul. It also included like all their fucking lackeys.
Yeah, so for every 8 soldiers, there was 2 dudes who carried their shit around. So there was 10 people. And then 10 of those groups under a, I believe a centurion, was a century, which was only 80 people. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And then 10 centuries made a legion, if I remember. Or made a cohort, I believe. And then I believe 10 cohorts made a legion. Right? So in reality, you didn't have to actually have that many soldiers. But it was never more than a couple thousand. And even at, like, the height of shit getting real fucked, Rome never really had more than, like, and that's, like, Caesar's sort of era, if we're talking about shit getting real fucked. There was never really more than, like, 20 active legions or so, right? Mm-hmm. So these dudes would have outnumbered, like, the entire Roman army, if that makes any sense. Like, this mob of peasants. In contrast, the Modenese were like, sir, they're coming to steal our shit. And Bonacolsi, who is, remember, a militant agent of the Holy Roman Empire, or Holy Roman Emperor, right? Was like, we've been preparing for this for our whole lives. So like, wait, what? So he had already gotten an army together of many, like, veterans of many battles, right? Mm-hmm. So he had 7,000 troops, Mike. I don't think I need to tell you that being outnumbered more than 4-1 is probably a bad idea.
Well, I mean, it depends on the troops.
Yes, but like I said, these are actual soldiers against, like, shit-swilling peasants.
Particularly angry, like, beer-gutted, like, farmers.
And now that we've set up the actual history, we're going to talk about the legend of the War of the Bucket, Mike. So legend goes that there was this town called Zappolino, okay? Mm-hmm. And in Zappolino, they had this sick-ass bucket, right? For their town's well. It was in the center of the town, and everyone loved this bucket. It was fucking great. They bought it drinks. They named it Al. They named it, Tony.
Oh, Tony!
It's Tony the Bucket! Ah! They call him the Bucket because he's a fucking bucket.
Okay,
but,
sounds about right.
It was Tony the Bucket. Who gives a fuck? Everyone loved this bucket, right? But then, the Modenese were like, hey, they have... that's not Italian. They have a bucket. We have to steal the bucket to make them mad because we don't like them. So they play a prank on him, right? And the Modenese steal the bucket, right? Now this makes the people angry. They're like, they have struck at the heart of the Bolognese people. They have taken a symbol of our freedom. So the Bolognese get their army together, right? And then they charge over to Zappolino, right? Which had been taken to steal the bucket, right? And there's a giant war, and the Bolognese lose, and the Modenese are like, haha, we have taken your bucket, and it will now go back to our little church or whatever the fuck. We're gonna hang it up to show how fucking awesome we are, right? And that was that. But that is definitely not what happened. And I'll explain why that legend exists here in a second. But Mike, what really happened was the Modenese were like, well, we don't want to be fighting over our land because it's very important. Because remember, the Modenese had been like actively going into Polynesian land and like fucking their shit up right back. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So they had taken the town or the city of Zappolino, right? Right?
Yeah.
Or not taken them, but they had marched on the town of Zappolino where the Polynesian army was like sort of stationed. Because that was like the jumping off point, right? And I say stationed as in like sprawled out amongst the city and shit, right?
Yeah.
They were not in like camps, really. So the Modenese army comes up and they're like, hey, we're gonna... French again, god damn it. We're gonna fuck you up. We're going to show you what the fine Italian anger can do to a little Italian boys. And they're like, they just call us boys, brother. I will not abide by any slander against the Bolognese people. So they fight, Mike. They fight in the battle. And about 2,000 men were killed total out of all of the men at the battle, right? The Modenese lose about 500. Sort of. We don't know how much it was. This is based on historical accounts. So this is about 500. The Bolognese lose 1,500, right? And guess what that means, Mike? All of these Bolognese dudes basically getting sent straight into the Modenese meat grinder were like, nah, like, they got it. So first, the back ranks flee, Mike. They're like, if they won't notice that we're not here because they're looking forward. But guess what, Mike? The back ranks flee because there's no one to stop them from fleeing. But then the people who are in front of the back ranks look behind them to see if they can flee. No, to see if they can flee. And they see that everyone's already fled. And they're like, wait, if they're fleeing, that means I can flee. I'm not the first one to run away. So guess what happens, Mike?
A rout.
They all run.
Yeah.
So they run into the city, and they run behind the walls. And if you know anything about ancient warfare, walls were king. If you had walls, that was GG. Basically, you would never really wanted to actually attack a city with walls. You would just make sure that they either surrender or starve them out, right? Or do some really crazy shit to try to get past them. Walls were the great equalizer. So the Modenese were not fucking with sieging a city that they were outnumbered 4-1 against, or more than 4-1 against. So the Modenese were like, oh, you're a bunch of bitches! And they sort of like walk around and they like steal a bunch of shit from the outlying like sprawl, right? Like their camps and stuff. They left all their shit in. And then they were like, you know what? You know what, boys? We're taking their fucking bucket. And there was a well outside of town. So as like a meme, you know how it's like you like the thing where like they mount the person's head on a pike, right?
Sure.
Kind of like that, but they held the bucket up. They were like, yeah, we got your fucking bucket, you Bolognese pieces of shit. And the Bolognese were like, no, they're stealing all our buckets and shit, no. So it was sort of like a symbolic like, yeah, and we're taking your bucket. Fuck you. And they just left.
Yeah, but I mean, this is what 13th century? So I mean, bucket's the height of technology.
Yeah, this is 1325. The very end of 1325. And thus ended the entire War of the Bucket. It was one battle.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, bucket's like the height of technology, so.
Yeah, so they stole the bucket. And that's the end of... And by the way, you can still... I'll put a picture of it. You could still actually... Here, let me find a picture real quick.
Yeah, you can still see the bucket, can't you? You can go to wherever they've whatever prison they have the bucket in.
Yeah, you can go find it in Bucket Prison. But yes, so I'll post it in the chat and I'll show it to everybody. This is the bucket. That's the bucket.
Ah, the bucket.
And here's a great artist's rendition that I love. You see when I told you they had like their head on a pike? This is how they left with the bucket. You see that guy on the right who's like, yeah, boys! Also, the guy on the far right with the black armor and the crossed red hammers, he looks like his face has just been turned into pulp. You
Well, I
notice
think
how
the
he's got
guy.
a basket full of eggs on the end of his sword?
Yeah, well, I think the guy. There's the guy immediately behind him in the red armor. And then there's another dude that's like immediately behind him, just going like, "Oh!"
But if you notice, they're all carrying shit. This was basically like a humongous, like, fuck you kind of like blow to the Bolognese. And it basically shamed them into stopping the war completely. Right? Because they realized they could never actually win. Now, Mike, you're probably thinking, man, that's pretty interesting. I wonder why that legend never became a thing and why we still know about it today. Enter
I am thinking that.
the 17th century, 1600s for those of you at home, with Alessandro Tassoni, right? And he was like, you know what? I'm a poet. I do poet shit. What do poets do, Mike? What is the thing that poets do?
Make shit up.
Yes. Now, what type of make, like, what's the old style, like, when you didn't have books, you had, like, epics, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the main type of epic that you hear about from poets? Think like the Odyssey and shit like that. What are they about, Mike?
They're about war.
Okay.
And
What are the people in war that do really good shit called?
heroes.
Heroes. So he was like, you know what? I'm gonna write a heroic epic about a war, about the War of the Bucket. So we have an Italian man writing ironically about how fucking awesome and like fucking stupid Italians are, right? Like it was intended to mock Italians. He is an Italian man. He's intended to mock Italians,
Okay.
right? So what ends up happening, right, is he writes it down, and it is called the La Scia Rapita, right? So he writes that down. He makes it, and it's 12 like sort of like story verses about the regional rivalry, basically setting it up as like this crazy, like an impossible. Fuck, not an impossible. I'm so stupid. an immovable force. Fucking Jesus Christ! An unstoppable force meets an immovable object, right? You know, like he's setting up like this crazy war, and then the final two cantos, which are like the portions of the story, it's like, then we begin the battle, blah, 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 you know, and it's like an epic, like the fucking Odyssey, like or like the Iliad, like the War of Troy, right? But it's a couple hundred years later, right? And Italy's still really not happy about this whole like Ghibelline Guel thing, right? This is post-Italian, or this is I don't remember if this is exactly during or after the and I quote, Italian Wars, right?
I think this is prior. I think the Italian Wars were like late 18th century.
The Italian Wars? No, this is a different set of Italian Wars. The War of the Gulf and the Ghibellines was still going on from 1325, right? And then in 1529, Charles I of Spain seized...
you're right. I was
during
thinking
the Italian Wars. Yeah. So the Italian Wars are going on for like an insanely long period of time. And I don't remember exactly when he wrote this. Let me check the date. But yeah, so this is 1622. This is only 100 years after the Italian Wars are sort of like, I think they're over? Hold on. They're Italian, so I'm not sure. Let me check really quick. Okay, yeah, so they ended in 1559. So this is like maybe one generation removed from the Italian Wars. So what ends up happening is this dude's like, it might not be a good idea to be posting like shit mocking Italians and how fucking stupid their wars are, right? So what he did was he actually had it posted as the Androvinci Melisoni, right? In Paris, right?
Okay.
So like, hey, French people, laugh at the Italians, haha. But then, Mike, it finds its way to Venice. And it gets really nice illustrations, right?
Ooh.
And it gets republished under the author's real name. So instead of it being written by Androvinci Melisoni, it shows like that it was actually written by fucking, what is this dude's name? Sorry. Alessandro Tassoni, right? So guess what, Mike? Bad shit starts happening.
Uh-oh.
Bad shit happened to my homie, right? Also, yes, you can actually read this poem. But in any case, basically, he's like super, super good. And he's like super, super awesome. But to be clear, right? This, like, it was so, like, it didn't get published again, like, under the Vienian shit, right? For such a long time. The dude was almost dead at this point. Because he was like, I will not allow them to come kill me because the Italians will be very mad. And he will no longer be invited to the, like, 30-person family dinner.
Sure.
But you can credit almost directly this dude with popularizing the myth. Because what ends up happening was in Vienna, it actually becomes a popular 3-act play. But guess what, Mike? It's a comedy.
Yeah, sounds about right.
So it ends up actually like being extremely influential, and that's how we know about it today. Yes, and it is in English. You can get it in English. There's 2 different prints of it. One was translated by John Ozell, and one was translated by James Atkinson. And I believe James Atkinson was one of those things where it was like 1800s. I believe this dude is English. Oh, sorry, he's Persian. You know, like the 1800s, where they're like, yes, the finest things were back during the Renaissance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's all about the English perspective, or whatever, the Anglo blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? And that's why, Atkinson, like, basically redid it. And that makes any sense. But yeah, so that's how we ended up with the lasting, legacy of the Battle of Zappolino, and at large, the War of the Bucket. A bit of spaghetti-flinging bullshit, as I have come to say, between the Bolognese and the Modenese. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, and nothing bad ever happened in Italy ever again.
Literally never. It's not like there was another continuous 300 years of war, 350-ish years of war, ending in additional wars.
Yep. God damn.
I actually want to do an episode about the Roman, separatist general who actually adopted the thing because he was such a good, naval combatant in general that he was, like, feared, and people started a rumor that he was literally, like, the son of Neptune, right? Like, Neptune, he was a demigod, right? Mm-hmm. So what he started doing was he never directly addressed it. But what he started doing is instead of wearing, like, the typical red of a Roman general, he wore a deep azure blue cape on all of his things. And people were like, oh my god, it's a magic cape. That was literally from Neptune himself. So Italians love, like, by Italians, I mean, like, people from the Italian peninsula, not Italians as, like, they're known today. But Italians love, like, stories and shit, and he literally used that to make people so fucking scared of him that he just owned, what's that place that's to the west of Italy? That island. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Sicily?
Not
or Sardinia.
Sardinia. So he basically owned everything between, like, the Gulf of Italy, like, that area. Like, where the front of the boot, the metaphorical, or the,
Yes.
Yeah, the front of the boot to Sardinia, he owned all of that. Like, literally all of it. Because people were so fucking scared to go, like, out into the water that they would, like, literally would get swallowed by fucking, tidal waves and shit. So, let's just say, there's a lot more Italian content to be mined. Italy is a content-rich peninsula, and that's all I'm gonna say. Any other questions, Mike? I am paying for your time, but I do want your opinions.
You're paying for my time?
I'm giving you very valuable drugs, understand?
Oh, right. Man, I think that, fucking Rabbles are a hell of a drug. And,
yeah.
And
so is routing. Routing is also a hell of a drug.
Yeah, fear of being killed in combat is a hell of a motivator.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other statements?
Fuck the Holy Roman Empire, I guess.
Yeah, fuck the Papal States. Fuck the Holy See. The Papal States, as in the organization of governmental, like, Catholicism, not like the Pope. But we can actually blame a lot of this on Papa John, the 22nd, to be honest.
Oh.
Because he...
Well, I mean, yeah, you're right.
Because he's the one that declared all of the Modenese to be free game. He was like, yes, you can seal that shit and God will love it. But in any case, we will see you all in 2 weeks or so. Bye-bye!
All right.